So often when we talk about broadcasting, people think about being the talent, being the camera operator, or being the director. But one of the key positions that we're trying to prepare you for is being a producer. What is a producer? Well, the producer is the person who gets the news on the air and who decides which stories will air and in what order. Think about what you've learned about framing theory. This requires sound news judgment and a sense of the station's mission. It is also the person who works most closely with the director. Remember, the producer decides what will air and in what order. The director then leads the production crew in getting the job done. So why would you want to be a producer? Well, because you can really write your own ticket. There are fewer people who are interested in being producers than are interested in being on air or in the technical jobs. As a producer, you get to see the big picture, and you can make as much as anchors. The position requires good writing skills, good people skills, sound news judgment, and excellent leadership skills. If you're interested in being a producer, you might think about taking classes in improving listening skills, media management, and conflict resolution. These are the primary duties of the producer. As you can see, it is a very detailed and important job, thus the reason good producers are in such high demand and are so valuable to a newscast or a sportscast. If you can develop these skills and you think about all the parts that are involved, you can really, again, write your own ticket and become a producer. One of the key things you'll do as a producer is write the rundown. The rundown is the table of contents for the script. It contains various items depending upon the station, but some of the common ones include the page number, which contains the block and the page number of the script, A1, B3, and etc. The slug, which is a 2 to 3 word description of the story. The ANC, or the name of the anchor reading the story. The shot, which means how many people will be in the shot and whether the graphics will be a part of the shot, thinking about a one shot, two shot, an over the shoulder, a wide shot, that sort of thing. The type, which describes the type and format of the story, either an intro, a tag or a toss, a VO, a package, a live shot. The WR, who is the name of the writer of the story. Runs, which is the running time of the story or the story segment. And back time, which is very critical. It's developed prior to the newscast to show the producer whether the show appears to be on time, and it's used during the newscast to keep track of whether the newscast is light or heavy, but more on that later. Here's an example of a rundown we've used for the Midwest Missouri Gridiron Report. Notice it isn't written exactly like we mentioned on the previous slide, but it's similar. Each station will have its own way of doing a rundown. When building a newscast, it's important to consider these points. Many varieties of formats: morning news, evening news, hour-long or half-hour, news magazine, etc. All are defined by the number of commercial breaks and blocks. You first must determine the news hole, which is the amount of time you have for news. You have skeleton time, which is the amount of time for commercials, weather and sports, teases and banter, and pad time. In this case, we're thinking about a newscast, not just a sportscast. And then you subtract this from the amount of time you have allotted, say 30 minutes. And the remainder is your news hole. Now, if we're talking about a sportscast, obviously the sports is going to be part of your news hole. But then you're thinking about your tosses and teases, your commercials, your pad time, the banter, and those types of things that will take up some of the time during your 30 minutes. You subtract all that, and the remainder of the time is what you have to talk about sports. As you're laying out your newscast, you need to consider how you are going to order your stories. This is based on priority, flow, and pacing. Priority refers to your news judgment, and again, that's where framing theory comes in. Flow determines grouping of stories by locale, topic, similarities, those types of things. And then pacing deals with spreading out readers, your packages, your voiceovers, so you don't have one similar type of story all grouped together as one, and then you go on to the next size. Some things to think about when you're dealing with your graphics, your artwork, and your pacing. Don't get stagnant. Change your shots from a 2-shot to a 1-shot, from a 1-shot to a 1-shot with an over-the-shoulder. When you have somebody on camera to video, those types of things. Use 1-shots for best eye contact and for focus. Use 2-shots to show teamwork and transition from one anchor to the next with related stories. But don't ping-pong. You don't want to go from a 1-shot on anchor 1 to a 1-shot on anchor 2 to a 1-shot on anchor 1 to a 1-shot on anchor 2. Have anchor 1 do a couple of stories, then go to anchor 2. Mix it up. Using graphics, make sure they're polished and professional, but they need to have a purpose. You need to make sure there's identification of the video, whether it's live or a package, who's the speaker, those types of things. If there's further detail, and where they can go to find more information. Now it's time to put it on air. Let's talk about timing. First of all, we're going to address back timing. Remember, if you have a 30-minute newscast, it has to be 30 minutes. 29 minutes and you have dead air. 31 minutes and you're into the next program. This is not good. One way to time out your newscast is through back timing. This can only be done if the show is running live because you have an actual time when the show is to begin and end. What I mean by that is if you are going live to tape, you may start shooting at 12:30 one day, 12:35 the next, and 12:10 on the third. That makes back timing awfully difficult. Remember though, the timing is always a shifting target. Your talent may banter longer or less than you had planned. You may have technical issues that need to be addressed, such as a package that doesn't run correctly. You'll always have to keep an eye on the clock. On the opposite end of the spectrum is forward timing. Forward timing runs the other way. You know the intro and first story are combined 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So if you start your show at 12 o'clock, the intro and first story should end at 12:02 and 30 seconds. Forward timing is useful if you have a certain story that has to air at a specific time. For example, if you're cutting to a live report or a newscast and you know right when it is to begin, you want to forward time. Then if you have to cut something to fit it in, you can. Why do we tease the audience? The goal is to keep the viewer interested in coming back. We can run teases in the opening segment, before we get into the story, as part of our toss to breaks, and at the end of our newscast. You want to benefit the viewer by letting him or her know what is coming next, but then you better be sure to deliver on that tease. If not, you are instantly going to lose credibility. You also don't want to oversell the tease. I've heard plenty of people complain about over-exaggerated teases that then bore the viewer. This is a major no-no. Finally, Monsieur and Madame Producer, think as a multimedia producer. Remember, you have audio, video, and print at your disposal. You may only be able to give a single comment from the news conference on the news, but you can drive the audience to your website to watch a replay of the entire news conference. You may be able to provide some highlights from the game, but you can provide an entire recap story with quotes and stats. You can use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to promote the show and drive viewers to your newscast, podcast, or website. The point here, take advantage of the medium and tell the story in all the ways possible.